I held such a strong grudge against my father that at one point I wanted to change my middle name. It was simply unbearable for me to see my middle name. That was the main reason I changed my first name as well, because I couldn't stand seeing it shortened after being teased in all kinds of schools and children's organizations. I just perceived my abbreviated name as an insult. And my surname especially was just... I felt as if being called by it was like being hit with a stone. When I was 14, I realized that it was disgusting for me to look at my reflection. I decided to lose weight by not eating, or eating as little as possible. My parents started to notice, and we began to have conflicts. Due to such strained relationships and the lack of social acceptance from my family in my case, I fell into a severe depression. I was studying at Skolkovo Institute of Science and Technology, and I had a small scholarship that I could live on. I remember sitting in a dark, modest apartment with painted walls, just enough to survive. I realized I had two options, either jump out of the window from the 21st floor or seek help from a psychologist, because I had a blackout in front of my eyes and didn't know how to continue living. I felt utterly alone. I had no support or foundation. I worked with one psychologist for half a year. During this time, I also went to see a cardiologist and a neurologist under my health insurance, because aside from all these emotional states, I had tachycardia, neuralgia, and my shoulders were like stone, still painful, but back then it was unbearable. I could hardly walk due to the excruciating pain in my legs. No one could help me. The neurologist who prescribed muscle relaxants once asked me if I was seeing a psychologist. I said yes. Are you seeing the one I recommended? No, it's too expensive. Go see her because she works with emotions. If your shoulders are this tense even with muscle relaxants, you need it. I went to my new psychotherapist, and after a few months or maybe half a year, she recommended I watch the System Vector Psychology training by Yuri Burlan, at least the free lectures. I had a lot of issues related to relationships with my parents, particularly the conflict with my father. Yuri Burlan explains this conflict in detail. During the training, my resentment towards my father faded, and I started understanding the conflicts with my father and my mother. Before this, the situation had been unbearable, and I couldn't understand what I had done wrong for them to treat me this way. During that year, when I hardly communicated with my parents, and if I did, we would argue intensely. Yuri Ilyich really breaks down these situations. There were textbook examples of my experiences. When I first listened to Yuri Ilyich talk about the anal vector, I had a hysterical laugh, because it felt like he was describing my father for 3 hours. The following 3 hours, Yuri Ilyich talked about me and how I conflict with my father under stress. It became clear that it wasn't personal. It wasn't that my father treated me poorly. He just couldn't behave differently under stress. That was a revelation for me. In the end, I didn't change my middle name after all. Now I don't feel the need to. During the first lecture on the audio vector, I realized that my depression isn't something static. It's something that can definitely go away. The contrast between spiritual searching or depression, turning inward, or learning about others and the world, it was profound. I don't remember ever taking so many notes. Additionally, the muscular vector lecture and some of the early sessions gave me insights into why my body type is what it is, and why it might differ from other girls. Maybe my ideal form isn't being thin like a skeleton. Rather, it's an athletic build simply because of my vectors, emphasizing my strengths in different areas. That revelation was quite surprising. And the lectures on female sexuality were exactly what I needed. After these lectures, for the first time, a guy gave me flowers. For the first time, someone paid for my coffee in a cafe without asking if I would split the bill. I began to feel completely different about myself. I lost that feeling that if I am in a relationship with someone, especially a man, I'm supposed to be like his mother or something. After Yuri Ilyich Burlan's training, I developed a new sense of awareness, confidence, and the feeling that I can't be offended unless I choose to be. It's only me who decides how I feel. I lost that wild fear towards the world. I now understand that only I decide how to live, what to do, how to spend my money, who to open up to, and how close to let anyone in, where my personal boundaries lie. I feel much more comfortable in the world. And now, for the first time, I feel ready to build relationships with people, including in professional communications and with men as well. Incidentally, the relationship with my father after the training, compared to what it was before, has improved. The unpleasant things he used to say to me before the training have stopped. He now seems to treat me more humanely. Our communication has improved, although there are still issues at times. When those moments occur, I immediately see that my father is under extreme stress again. I need to give him some space to breathe. Previously, in such moments, I would go on the defensive because it felt like my father was coming at me with a sledgehammer. You know that classic phrase, I gave you life, and I can take it away. But now, Taras Bulba has left our house. At least that aspect has greatly changed. For the first time, just recently, when I was at the second level of Yuri Ilyич's training, I saw online that it was Father's Day, and I felt a desire to congratulate my father. For the first time, I had that impulse to wish my father a happy Father's Day. When I still held a grudge, I couldn't understand the point of congratulating him. He hurt me, so why would I congratulate him? But now our relationship is warmer overall. I genuinely wanted to congratulate him. Although there were fewer technical ways to do so than before, I did it anyway. It happened that I sent my dad a message, but I got busy with errands. Later, I called my mom, and she told me that my dad had mentioned he was really touched. During the first level of the training last year, I found a job. It was quite a tough situation because my first position was literally the CEO of a startup. Imagine trying to explain in an interview that I am a startup CEO seeking a job because, at the moment, we can't make any profit from organ printing. It's still a very developing field. And no, I'm not going to leave the project. During the training, I found a job at an IT company. The first period was challenging, trying to settle in, but now I see paths for further development. I feel like it's become easier for me to express myself and move forward. At some point before the investment committee meeting, I realized how I needed to present myself and conduct myself for the most effective communication. This isn't about technology or presentations. It's about the properties of the psyche, about the first impression. For example, 12 contacts are all different. Before the training, I would have written a generic message and sent it to everyone. Now, it takes a lot more brainpower, but I individually craft each message. I think about how we interacted with that person, their traits, where to thank them, and where to include specific details. It's also become easier to handle rejections. Before the training, I would have been significantly frustrated by the fact that out of 12 investors, some might not respond at all. Now I understand that it might have nothing to do with me. I don't feel like the world will collapse if they don't reply. It doesn't undermine my confidence. Regarding employment, I see other people's traits better now. Maybe not entirely, but I see my strengths. It's become easier for me to assert when a meeting time is convenient and when it's not. It's become easier to present my hypotheses and business proposals. In the past, admitting my ideas scared me. I used to get anxious to the point of shaking. I often wondered why people didn't take me seriously. Now it's much easier in all these aspects. I even feel like among my team of 3, my belief in our potential is the strongest. For those who haven't undergone Yuri Ilyich's training, they don't believe in the statement, wanting equals ability. How does that work? But it does. And a week ago, I stopped taking antidepressants. I wanted to get off them so much that I took the risk of stopping immediately without gradually tapering off. I realized I couldn't make myself take them any longer. Visiting the pharmacy had become an act of self-violence that I avoided for 3 days. Eventually, I just understood that I was done. I want to thank Yuri Burlan immensely, as his training drastically transformed my life. Problems I deemed unsolvable began resolving. I started becoming part of creative communities, and people began inviting me to open mics with my poems. I found the energy to attend open mics with my poetry. I began seeing smiling people everywhere, and I have no idea where they all came from.